What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to Celio's Network. Today we're doing a deck profile, and I actually have brought a guest with me for this one. I'm on a Discord call right now with Frank Percic, who has created another wacky Frank deck, and this one's for standard format. I believe he and some other people actually played this in a recent Hexter tournament, but I'm going to have Frank tell you all about the deck in just a moment. Frank, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, so hey, I'm Frank Percic. I've been playing since about 2016, the 2016-17 season. From that time until now, I've been top 16, day 2 Worlds player in the 2017-2018 season. I top 8'd the Oceania Intercontinentals that same year, and I've gotten just over the time about a couple more achievements, a lot of day 2s. Most recently, the last 2 regionals that we've had before COVID, the actual in-person regionals, I top 16'd both of those back to back in expanded. So that was been super awesome, and a lot of other stuff just in between there.
And were those 2 regionals Dallas and Collinsville?
Yes. There were 2 different formats because Collinsville was the first time that Sword and Shield was legal, and then Dallas was the last tournament that Cosmic Eclipse was legal for the expanded format as far as regionals go. And past that, I've just started a new project, a new team called Undaunted, which is really how this deck came to fruition. It's just us kind of talking back and forth, which is and it's pretty fresh, and so not too much to say about it yet, but I think a lot in the future for that as a team.
Awesome, yeah. And I definitely think people will want to check out Undaunted and its players, and look for new decks and things that you guys might do in the future. So does Team Undaunted have a Twitter and everything now?
Yeah, we just made a Twitter account. It's at Undaunted. Just take out all of the vowels. So
I'll put it in the description. we'll have a link to that in the description.
Appreciate it. Yeah, so we
awesome.
we made a Twitter account right before the tournament that we all played this deck at. We kind of wanted to use this as like a debut for just something that has come out of this kind of partnership between all of us.
Yeah.
And we're working on a logo and everything now, and hopefully maybe some videos in the future, but we'll see.
Awesome. So let's get into this deck and how you and the team started building it. So how did the idea of a Bird Trio tag team deck come about?
I mean, we all shot like tons and tons of ideas back and forth for a while, and I mean, we tried everything from, I was really big on like melodic decks, and I mean, Kirk was trying out I won't give it away because I know he's still working on it, but some Beedrill spice, and I think that's the most I'll say about it. And so we shot a lot of things back and forth between each other, but eventually these birds kind of stuck. And the idea behind it was I wanted a card that could tank a hit and then heal itself, and also like have just a good route for like knocking out 2 VMAX Pokemon or 2 tag teams in a row, just taking like 3 prizes and 3 prizes. And so like the format we're in right now, right, is like very heavily involved in like 2-shotting, just because like these Pokemon's HP now, 340 with Eternatus is one of the most popular decks. Giving up 3 prizes, having to do 340 damage, there's nothing that can one-shot that, right? When you had like the past format, these 3 prizers like Pikarom and things like that, you could ideally like take them out in one shot or like set up really good math. Where these VMAX Pokemon, they really just you can't one shot them, and so but however you do so much damage, right, that like they don't heal themselves. Like in previous like 2-shot formats, right, like they would like take a hit and then you could like heal yourself all the damage off, right? Like Charizard Green's decks would play like 4 like life herbs, like herbs, and like,
and then before that we had the Acerola Wars in the Zoroark format.
Exactly, but like the healing we have now with like pretty much just Mal and Lana, or I don't know, there's some like Centiskorch VMAX decks that might play
Hyper Potion.
Hyper Potion, yeah, exactly. But I mean, like, you're doing so much damage, right? Like the Eternatus is doing like 270 damage, and
Yeah.
Centiskorch can get like huge numbers. That like even if you spend all this time healing yourself, it's just like unanimously going to be a 2-shot meta, like regardless.
Yeah,
of...
like you could realistically heal with Malolana and Hyper Potion and still just get knocked out next turn.
Exactly. So like the meta is just like very much defined by like 2-shotting each other.
Yeah.
And so I liked the idea of birds because you could smack something for 210. And that's why and I'll sidetrack a minute, but that's why Inteleon I think is so good, is because you're doing 180 and you're still 2-shotting stuff, but you have that bonus effect of like getting chipping damage on the bench. And I want to experiment with like, I think Malamar might be really good because it's one of those decks. It doesn't do like extremely high amounts of like 200 plus damage, right? It has like a solid like 180, but because you're 2-shotting anything anyway, you want to like get the most out of your attacks. And so
absolutely.
This bird trio is cool because you had the 210, which is not at this point in time going to be a 1-shot, but you have like really good math in the fact that you can take a hit and then like fully heal yourself with the GX move. And so just the fact that like you 2-shotting each other back and forth with whatever deck, like the big decks in the format, right? Like Eternate is like these big VMAX decks, Centiskorch, Inteleon, stuff like that. And then being able to just like fully heal yourself really gives you a good edge. And the fact that you're putting 110 on like multiple targets just set up like super good math. Like you do 210 to one thing, and then you'll do 110 to that plus whatever their next attacker is, and then do 210 to their next attacker. And it was just like really ideal math for this format, and just like a really good effect for this format.
Yeah, definitely seems like the math, because when you started, I went into this, we talked briefly before starting the video. I told you, I had put the deck together on PTCGO, looked over all the counts, got some questions prepped, but I didn't actually put in any games with the deck yet because I don't know how the heck this thing works yet. And so now that you started talking, I'm looking at the numbers, I'm looking at the other cards in the deck, I'm like, oh wait, Vitality Band, Trinity Burn, that's 220. Then Vitality Band with Sky Legends, that's 120. 220 plus 120 is Eternatus's health.
Yeah, exactly. And like if you have the Tool Scrapper and stuff, like you can greens for like Tool Scrapper Vitality Band and like knock a metal goggles off of a Zacian, and then attach the Vitality Band and do 220 to it like really early on in the game, like before they're able to GX, is super good. Because like and we can go into matchup specific stuff later, but that's really good specifically like early on, because if they don't, even if they do GX early and they're not getting rid of 4 energy, that's like really good for you anyway. And so the fact that you're able to like hopefully one-shot Zacian like really early on if they started or something like that, or before they're able to GX, it's pretty ideal also. So Vitality Band was just like doing a lot of good math. And even like Volcanion and Baby Blondes having 120, you can like to Vitality Band and then Sky Legends them in the active, and it'll one-shot them instead.
Yeah, that's awesome. So how much do you think, let me ask you this, because I think this would be something that people are interested in knowing. It's a greens deck, so we're playing 4 greens exploration. Just in case anybody has missed a large chunk of standard, maybe you're just coming back, greens exploration is a supporter card that you can only play if you have no Pokemon with abilities in play, and you can search your deck for any 2 trainers. So typically greens decks are a whole other category, and they're fairly rare right now because there are so many strong abilities. Dedenne, Eldegoss, Crobat. Being a lightning deck, there could be Tapu Koko Prism here, Jirachis, even Zigzagoons for fixing math with Headbutt Tantrums. So what goes into deciding to make a greens deck?
So this actually started off as an ability-based deck with all of those things you mentioned, like Tapu Koko, Prism Stars, Jirachi, Scoop Up, Zigzagoon, Mewtwo, like Mine Report Mewtwo to put the welder back on top and Jirachi into it. And that one just wasn't as doing well. It you need so much energy in the deck to really get all your attackers and stuff out, and like so many different resources that you were just like to draw and hit everything you needed in the right order. You were just like burning through so many resources, and like my scoop up nets would be gone like way too early, and I couldn't
Okay.
draw chi anymore. And it just, I don't know, it just didn't really. It was really nice and it was consistent. You got set up and stuff like that, and the abilities were nice, but it's just it like couldn't close out games, and so we decided, I think it was Britt actually, from Undaunted, that really asked like, well, what if this was a green deck? And I sat on it and for a while, and I thought it was a bad idea at first, but the more I thought about it, it was just nice because the Victini was there, and you pretty much get like 2 free Victinis because they're forced, if you only play 2, like they're forced to just knock out 2 bird trios anyways, which is a 6 prize game.
Mm-hmm.
So like forcing like the 2 Victinis in between was like super nice, and the greens engine was just really really good. And it just allowed you to hit exactly what you need, like when you needed it, and you weren't like as reliant on Welder. Like with the ability version of the deck, you were just super reliant on hitting Welder when you needed it to charge your guy up, whereas like the Victini accelerating energy is really really nice. So it just like all just kind of like mesh together better, like with the greens engine. And the other thing, a lot of people have been complaining about the format with these, ability Pokemon with like Dedenne and Crobat and Eldegoss and stuff like that, and the ADP existing, that the in boss's orders, it's really not as skilled of a format because it's kind of so focused around just bosses ordering something up off of the bench and taking two, 3 prizes on it, and that's really like your game plan rather than actually facing whatever your opponent puts in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
And so just being able to build a deck that wasn't hindered by these like 2 prize bench sitters was super nice too. And after we put some games in with it, it was just super super nice, and the greens engine made the deck extremely consistent. Like I almost every time I play this game will get like the turn, the Victini off right away, and then the going into the bird trio after that. Like it hardly stumbles in the early game, which is super super nice. Just having a consistent deck that can do what it wants to do every single game.
Nice. Okay, so let's talk about some of the I guess a lot of this deck is interesting and unique, like because like I said, greens decks are a bit rare in our current standard format. But there are definitely some cards I wanted to talk about specifically. Of course, Bird Trio and Victini being the only Pokemon, they're both fairly important to the deck. They're both integral to the deck. You can't play without either one of them. And Moltres, Zapdos, Articuno tag team. The Sky Legends GX attack is a really, really awesome tag team GX attack. Like, I think it kind of brings out the best parts of tag team GXs as much as we'll complain about them.
Yeah.
But shuffle, so for colorless, it shuffles this Pokemon and all cards attached to it into your deck. And that's, for anyone watching, that's kind of like the healing aspect of the deck that Frank was mentioning. So you just get to shuffle this Pokemon into your deck. And then if it has the fire, water, and lightning energy attached to it, it does 110 to 3 of your opponent's Pokemon. And if one of those Pokemon you choose is the active, a buff like Vitality Band would affect it. So essentially you can do 120 to the active and then 110 to 2 benched Pokemon. And like you said, that's nothing to scoff at, especially because of the specific math that it really works well with in this format. And you get to essentially heal. Now, before thinking about that, the 220, 120 into Eternatus, you get to heal your guy. One of my questions was about Lillie's Poké Doll, but if you just wanted to talk about that real quick, I think now the doll makes itself kind of clear on why it's in the list.
Yeah, at first it was just like a cute idea that I like kind of had and like discussed with everybody on Undaunted for a little bit. Was just like, after you shuffle this back in the deck, like you can promote a doll and it's searchable by greens. That was the thing, was like when we played the greens version, that was something that we had more space to include and something that was like easily searchable. And you have bench space now, whereas in the ability version of the deck you really didn't. And so we first started playing without it and noticed that you would like Sky Legends and then promote the Victini and then it would get knocked out, which was like super annoying because ideally what you want to do is like the first Victini goes up and you accelerate to the benched one, like the benched bird trio, and then you attack with the bird trio, and then use the GX move, and then once you shuffle it back in, you need to promote something. You don't want to promote your bird trio, so really the only thing you're left with is a Victini, and then that's their 5th prize. So you can't put down another Victini to charge up a second bird trio, or you can't do it. It was like it's just like a dead card. It's like you're just basically sacrificing it to shuffle your bird trio back in, which is annoying. And so the Pokédoll really allowed you to, if your opponent didn't have any way around that, any gusting effect, allowed you to use the Victini a second time, which is super nice. And what I realized how important the second Victini is, like the more games I played, not only for charging up, but sometimes you just like want to clean up math with that second attack and just do 30 to something. Like say you miss Vitality Band on a Eternatus VMAX, just like letting them knock out the doll and then like hitting them with the Victini for 30.
Taking 3 prizes with Flare.
Yeah, and it's like, and it buys you a turn to like attach to, like if you already have energy on it, it buys you a turn to attach to like a bird trio on the bench, so you can like attach to the bird trio, Flare, gets knocked out, your opponent goes down to 1 prize, promote the bird trio, Welder, attach whatever other energy you're missing, and then finish up with that last one. So it's just super nice having the doll there to like take a hit, because you really want to get the most use out of all the prizes, all 8 of the prizes you're giving your opponent.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. It's all very interesting. The next thing I wanted to talk about was 3 quick ball. Now, it's completely understandable looking at the list. There's only 7 Pokemon. You're starting one of the 2 Pokemon you need on the board. So, and one of them you can get with Tag Call, which you played 2 of. And you have 4 greens. Greens can grab a Tag Call or a Quick Ball. So it kind of makes sense looking at it to have 3 Quick Ball, but in a format where every deck is started out with 4 Quick Ball, 4 Research, you have your staples that you throw 4 of in. How do you decide I'm cutting a 4th Quick Ball and that's optimal? Like, does it ever feel wrong to cut the 4th Quick Ball and you have to convince yourself it's right?
No, actually, it was a pretty easy cut. That was Dustin's idea, and it was more of a last minute thing. I just had 4 quick ball because like the space was there and we wanted to max consistency. But really, like I never found myself in all the games I played like opening and it was like, oh man, if this, it was we had 1 tag call and 4 quick ball instead of 3 quick ball and 2 tag call. And never was I, like, oh, if this tag call was a quick ball, like my setup would be so much better, right? You're pretty much most of the time already just either start Victini because it's more than a 50% chance that you do that, or you have like greens into quick ball switch. Normally, because I mean, like if you start the bird trio, like you need the combo, right? So never did I have like switch tag call in hand, and only if this tag call was a quick ball, really.
Right. Okay.
Just like the odds of the odds of like the 4th quick ball like coming into play are just so low. Like you pretty much hit it all the time anyway, and so making the cut for a second tag call was nice because then it allowed you to actually grab a supporter if you needed it. So it's like. Rather than having this 4th quick ball in my hand and no supporter, I could just like have a tag call and then grab like the Cynthia Caitlin if I needed it. And not having to discard in a greens deck is really nice too, because sometimes your hand can get pretty limited in what you want to get rid of.
Yeah. No, that's cool. Just because like when you get so used to building these meta decks based on the popularized lists, and 4 quick ball is 99% of the time optimal in most decks, sometimes it can be like a little weird to stray away and say, this isn't what people usually do, but maybe it's right this time. So I just wanted to talk on that just a bit, because like if people out there are building rogue decks and they're not sure, like, is this bad or is it just hasn't been done before?
Yeah, I think, I mean, this is one of the instances, right, where it came down to actually just playing games with it and then seeing like where if you can cut that or not, right? And so the biggest thing I ask myself even when I question like the the standard formula of deck building is when you have a cut or something that you think would be maybe better, just pretend X card you want to cut is Y card that you want to put in, and ask yourself, if this card was this other thing that I want to play, like would this hand be better? And how many times in my games where it's like, wow, if I just had a quick ball, right? So that's kind of I deal with like in deck building in general. What I like to do is just have a pretty clear cut, standard list that really follows like that same template, and then just as you get more games in with it, it's kind of like sculpting, right? You just like chisel away at the clay a little bit, and eventually by the time you're done you'll have a pretty picture.
Nice. So the next card is Giant Bomb. So you have an interesting split of a Big Charm, 2 Bomb, and 2 Vitality Band. And at least in the current standard format, I feel like decks will decide on one tool and stick with that instead of running a split of tools. Why Giant Bomb and Big Charm? Why not just one or the other?
It's just that I think the nature of greens deck is the fact that you can with greens search for exactly what item you want when you want it. Allows you to be a little more variable with like the tools that you play. So in most decks now, right, you probably want to play the same tool because you just want to hit it consistently, right? You just want to have the max odds of hitting it. Whereas greens decks, you play a greens and you can just pick, door 1, door 2, door 3, depending on your situation. And so being able to do that with greens kind of allowed the deck to play all these different options, and each one has its own integral part, right? Like Vitality Band is really good for the math, and actually the deck started out, it just had, and at least the ability version too, just had like 3 Vitality Band or 2 Vitality Band in some versions, and that was all that we played. And we like questioned all of these different tools, and I found myself, oh well, I'm only using like 1, maybe 2 Vitality Bands during game, which a lot of the time got shuffled back in anyway. And so that, being what it was, really allowed me to get, more creative with it. And just like, again, the nature of greens, not having to like hope I draw into it and needing to run more copies to draw into it. It allowed me to just play the exact amount that I need, and then get a little more creative and use other stuff for certain situations. And so Vitality Band's in it for the math that we talked about. Big Charm is really good against Mewtwo and Eternatus because Mewtwo can really pop off and do 300 damage pretty quickly with the Charizard's GX attack. And Eternatus sometimes with 3 Zigzagoon pings can get 300 on you in one attack. And so having the Big Charm there for those matchups, like when just depending, like Eternatus obviously is like a lot more complicated because you have to choose between one or the other depending on your situation. But just having the option of like 1 Big Charm in case Mewtwo is threatening like a 300 damage attack, or Eternatus already hit you with some Zigzagoons and you wanted to survive if they were to attack you. Having just 1 card in there for that was really nice. And then Giant Bomb is just like pretty cute because it not only like you can obviously attack, like do 210, attach it to yourself, and then knock out stuff like coming back into your turn, like make them gust around you when they don't want to. It's certain things, especially like Zacians and stuff like that, and like Melmetal decks where they have like you missed the Tool Scrapper, or they use their GX attack already and you can't one-shot them. Just having that as like insurance to still get the one shot was nice. Or just being able to like hit an Eternatus for 210 and then you attach Bomb and they do 100 themselves and then finish it up with a Victini or something like that is really nice. Or even, I don't know, if you can't, or if you have like Zacian or something and they haven't you haven't done damage to them yet. They take 100, and then you can Sky Legends them with Vitality Band and put it up to 220. And so there's just like a lot of cool math that the Giant Bomb took care of, and it allowed it to you can just place it strategically so that they just have to gust around when they don't want to, or like if you have the doll in the active and they want to hit something on the bench, you can attach the bomb to the thing on the bench. So if they do gust around the doll, then they just take the damage that they don't want to take. And so it really allowed you to make these like methodical plays that set up good math for you, and forced your opponent to do awkward things, which is always nice.
So I was thinking about how this deck might be weak to early bosses orders. And I mean, really looking at pretty much any deck, you could say, well, if my opponent has an optimal start plus a boss's order, like kind of any deck can have a problem versus that. But I was looking at Giant Bomb, and I was hoping you would say that, because I thought Giant Bomb on something when a boss would really hurt you, maybe if your opponent has a large hand and you're expecting boss as an option, maybe even if they like Mewtwo boss to the top last turn or something like that, you could potentially Giant Bomb your benched Pokemon to, you know, if they still decide that's what they want to do, at least it sets you up to knock something out afterwards.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's exactly right. It's just there is like another hurdle for your opponent when they put you in a corner, and you can kind of dig yourself out a little bit by doing that.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, that's exactly right. And like you said, any deck is going to struggle with an early boss. This deck, it will just as well. Even like if you hit damage on you early, like before you do the 210, it's annoying because like you might have to Sky Legends early, like when you don't want to, and so just like having that option there, like a perfect example, right? Let's talk about Zacian V. You want to hit them for 220 with Vitality Band, but you're expecting them to boss's orders you next turn. You can Giant Bomb. They'll gust you up, take 100, and then you can, once you discard the Giant Bomb, put Vitality Band on it, knock them out with the Sky Legends, and then heal all that damage off. So exactly right, like you said, it can make like plays like that happen.
Yeah, and that's an interesting one because, first of all, absolutely zero people have tested against Victini Birds Greens. So
Yeah.
there's no matchup experience going into most games. If I'm staring down a bird with a Giant Bomb, like this whole game so far, I probably haven't even been focusing on what I'm doing. I'm just trying to figure out what your deck is and how to beat it.
Yeah,
And
that's like
at that point, I might just boss up your bird and hit into the bomb, thinking you could never hit the 120, forgetting that bomb gets discarded. Like, it's one of those distractions that, like, playing against a non-meta deck like this could definitely make your opponent, like, even mess up and hit the bomb when they shouldn't, and things like that.
Yeah, that's why I love rogue decks so much, right? It's because you are always so meticulously prepared for every little thing that your opponent's going to come out, and all these ins and outs and these intricate little plays that you can make, right? And for a non-meta deck to really function, you have to know all of your matchups like perfectly, because it's not tier 1 for a reason, right? It's just because it's not inherently strong. It's strong because there are certain aspects about it that can deal with everything in the meta. And so do you just needing to have so much knowledge to like pile these decks, and then on the opposite side, your opponent having no idea what's going on, just feels really, really good. And I think it's just a great reason why I like rogue decks so much.
Yeah, it gives you an advantage that you can't gain while playing a meta deck. Obviously, when you're playing a meta deck, you can gain other advantages, like just making your list more consistent than everybody else's or practicing more. But with this, like you said, it's just disconnected from other feelings when you go into a deck. When you go into a tournament with a rogue deck or a unique idea, and you have practiced all of these matchups, and your opponent has never even looked at some of your cards.
Yeah, and I mean, some games you'll just win because your opponent can't improvise as well as other people, right?
Yeah.
And so they're making like extremely suboptimal plays and not knowing it, and you can't really blame them for that either, because like you said, they haven't really tested against that. But it's just it's really nice to just have those, rounds and stuff where you can just take a breather because, you're just gonna outplay your opponent based on sheer surprise factor.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I was also going to bring up the split of stadiums, but I think that's probably similar to the split of tools. Just because you're a greens deck, you have the options.
Yeah. You just have the option to kind of grab what you want, and a lot of the time too, like with we actually had a lot more stadiums. It was 2 Viridian, 2 Giant Hearth to start.
Okay.
And then what I found was that the Energy Spinner was so useful for energy that the stadiums were really not as important.
Mhm.
They're mostly just there for consistency. So if you like whiff the spinner, like you still have a way to get energy. And obviously like to bump your opponent's stadiums is super nice.
Yeah.
And again, like you said, with the greens, just the nature of it is you can kind of pick and choose like as you'd like. Like if I need a fire energy or I need something to welder, like I can grab the Giant Hearth for fire energy for next turn, or if I like have everything set up except I just don't have my one water energy or whatever attack, you have the Viridian. So it's just again just creating more versatility and just having other uses, right? Like even if you don't need the effect, just to bump the other stadium, just having that in there is nice. And the Training Court actually is probably my favorite stadium. One of the problems that we encountered like really early on was energy recovery, which is like when the retrieval went in, and then I think Dustin put in the training court, I think.
Yeah.
Which is just super nice because it was a way to grab energy such as like Viridian or Giant Hearth would, but also like a form of recovery because usually when you're playing it, there's going to be energy in the discard. And again, it wasn't like I was drawing it super early on and I was like, oh, if this was only a Viridian or oh, if this was only a Giant Hearth, right? It was a really good recovery tool, and just having the 1/1 split and the option when
Yeah.
you greens is super great.
Yeah, absolutely. So the list is it looks like one of those lists that are just like amazing to look at and take it in, and you find like something new about it every time you look at it, or at least for an outside eye. So about the matchups or maybe even like the desired meta for this deck, what did you go into working with this deck expecting to beat or wanting to beat, and maybe like what are some of the losses that you'll just accept?
Ideally it was good for just those big, 2-shot kind of decks, those decks that are doing like the 250 damage, right? And just being able to tank a hit and heal was kind of the idea. So things like Zacian decks, Eternatus, Inteleon, trying to think what else the meta looks like. Centiskorch a little bit. Just those decks that I like, again, that will just more than likely 2-shot you and get 2-shot by you. Things that the deck you don't want to see. And surprisingly, actually, it fared pretty well against Baby Lounge, which I didn't think it would. Like we thought about teching in the Amistar, but
Okay.
honestly, it didn't really need it. Like it did fine against Blounds, just with the Vitality Band math and the Victini to clean up something, and them relying on like Oricorio sometimes and stuff too. It was pretty cool. We talked about putting a Zelf in the deck, which has the side power attack to just like clean up multiple Blounds, but in everyone's games, like Blounds is pretty like 50-50 to maybe slightly favored.
And now the new wave Blounds is playing 2 and sometimes 3 Cramorant because they are picking off Dedenes and Crobats with Zigzagoon scoop up nets, and you don't have any of that.
Exactly. So it was a better match than I thought. Ideally you don't want to see Obstagoon, Decidueye. We had a Drampa in, actually, a Cosmic Eclipse Drampa earlier for the Dragon Arcana attack that it does 70+70 if you have 2 different types of basic energy, which like fit really well. But just the lack of Decidueye in the meta, even though one just won that that huge tournament.
Yeah, we've had 2 win tournaments now.
Yeah, and I mean it's just one of those decks like I don't know if you remember when like Hoopa was really prominent in the meta, like quad Hoopa is just like one of those decks that was just like you either play a counter or you don't, and the people playing the deck are so scarce, like the odds that you play one is so low, but because of that, the one person that does play it just takes it super far.
It's one of those for sure.
So the Drampa is optional depending on if you expect a lot of Decidueye. We just took it out because starting it is really annoying.
And it doesn't counter Goon either.
Yeah,
and
that's
now
the other thing.
All of the Decidueyes are Deci Goon now. They're not just Decidueye. So
yeah, exactly.
You have to like counter both of them, or
So for those reasons, we just kind of took it out. So I mean, Decidueye unideal, Pikarom horrible match.
Yeah, let's zoom in on the lightning weakness.
Yeah, Pikarom and Vikavolt not great. Anything lightning isn't ideal, and then it actually really struggles with energy denial. Like because
I was
energy.
Thinking that.
Yeah, I think this is. We can talk about this another time. This is kind of a side tangent, but I think energy denial is just super good in the meta right now.
Yeah, I've been playing a lot of Torkoal Box. I haven't brought it into
dude. Oh my gosh.
I haven't brought it into an online tournament yet, but it's very fun to boss up Eternatus and get rid of both of their energy.
Yeah. And like that's the other thing about like rogue decks, right? Like this is just one of like, 5 or 6 decks that are in like a compartment somewhere in my brain, and and in the Undaunted group chat of just like listings of like, what about this, like this, and like one of those other decks is like Torkoal, because like like you're saying, just like energy now is just like super good right now. And that being said, this deck like really struggles because you're so because you need so much energy and you're so reliant on hitting that like turn 2 attack with like, okay, Weldering for 2 energy, Victini 2 energy on, and then starting to get your next guy charged up. Like one hitch in that strategy just like sets you back so far, and so that's really annoying. Like I played against a Lucario Melmetal with like 4 hammers, and that was just a nightmare. And that's one of the harder matchups too, is Lucario, because you need to really like you have to be very, very smart about when you're shuffling yourself back in the deck, because if you do it without healing any damage, you're kind of putting yourself behind, but also if you allow them to GX all your energy off and leave you stuck in the active, that really sucks too. So that matchup can be a little different. So energy denial for sure is something that you don't like to see in lightning Pokemon. But other than that, the deck's like really good for the meta. And that's the other thing too about like rogue deck building. Like normally, like when you're building like a deck like this, it's for like one specific tournament. It's like for the big tournament, like you build this deck around like the meta, and it's like an anti-meta deck, and it's because it's like certain things are like so easy to counter it, right? Like a Mew a Mew would like really make this deck bad. Like if you're because you're so reliant on like doing your main attack and then like finishing them off while softening up their secondary attacker. A Mew preventing that from happening is just like you can't do much about that. So it's like one of those decks that really you need the specific meta for it, and that's why like rogue decks really pop up at like one tournament, because it's good for like that tournament. And
that's kind of your specialty, is you play this really crazy rogue deck, but that unfortunately it's never seen again.
Yeah, the one exception to that is the Giratina deck from Dallas, just because that deck was just like so good. It came up
came up at Collinsville again, right?
It came up at Collinsville, and I feel like people probably will still play an expanded, even though like
I've seen some expanded online events going around with like custom ban lists and stuff, and people are still playing Roxy Chomp.
Yeah. So that was one deck. It was just like, it was so, and like, oh my god, dude, I hate to reminisce on like this crowning achievement of mine, but like gosh, dude, when we were testing that deck, it was just we were like, this is the deck. Like literally like weeks before, or we probably finalized it like a week before, but just like we're like, this is winning the tournament, like for sure. And so
and then I went and played Mewtwo instead.
I know, you had the deck.
I had money in my hands, and I just played Mewtwo.
But no, sometimes, I mean, to be fair, a lot of people dropped with it, so sometimes it's like go with what you know.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Um,
But yeah, is there anything we glossed over with the Greensbirds, or did we hit on everything?
yeah. I mean, it's like I said, it's pretty straightforward strategy for the most part. It's weird because it's like really hard to play, but because of all of these like one of options and greens
Yeah.
options that you have, and just like knowing when to make those like tiny plays. But outside of that, like if you can sometimes just steamroll your opponent by doing like this super simple strategy of like smack you for 210, bird trio,
Yeah. Yeah, I
finish it
definitely
off.
think like in conversation, the strategy sounds simple. It's like, well, you charge up a large tag team, you hit them, they hit you, you heal yourself, you charge up a large tag team, you hit them again. Like,
Yeah,
that's kind of the strategy in conversation. But in playing it, especially greens decks are always like this. Like, if you get the wrong item once, that's 50% of your search. You're probably just throwing the game by searching out one wrong card.
yeah, exactly. And so I definitely would recommend that if people did want to play this, for sure, like put some time in with it and get like the matchups down, because they're super super intricate, like each and every one. And so definitely would recommend that. Like we all played the deck at these Hexer tournaments and nobody did that well because it
Yeah.
was just, we were all like, oh, I had the game, I just grabbed the wrong thing, or I decided I threw away my great catcher, or I like, oh, I bird trioed on the wrong turn. I did that. Oh my god, it was so dumb. I bird trioed a turn too early. I was worried about like Mewtwo and Mew like Charizard GXing me, and so I bird trioed. I did the GX attack without any damage on me, which like ruined the entire game.
Yeah.
So it can get like pretty hard.
Hmm.
So I definitely recommend it. And luckily, some people messaged us and actually were able to do pretty well with it at like subsequent tournaments, which was like super cool.
That's
Um,
awesome.
and like on the ladder and stuff too, just like the amount of games that we've like won with it collectively, I know it's a really good deck.
Cool.
Um, yeah, no, any other questions for me about it, or?
No, I think we covered a good bit of it. I mean, 41 minutes on Green's Birds. I think this is more than the people asked for, but I think they'll enjoy it. A
Yeah,
lot. We talked about a lot of good, just rogue deck stuff. So, like, if anyone listening to this, watching this video, is, interested in building your own creation that goes out and wins a major event one day, like, make sure you didn't skip anything in this video, because Frank spit a ton of knowledge at everybody in this, and yeah, it was really great to have you on and feature your deck.
yeah, man. Thanks so much for having me on. And like you said, if anybody finds himself as a rogue deck builder and needs any advice, feel free to find me on Twitter at Percic.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll put your Twitter and the team's Twitter in the description for the video. Oh, I think we lost Frank. Did we lose Frank? We might have lost Frank. Hey, you there, Frank? Oh boy. Well, yeah, I'll put Frank's Twitter and his team's Twitter in the description down below. And
Hello.
thank. Oh, there's Frank. I was just about to do my sign off for the
No, it
video.
was super. I was like talking in my bubble, like my chat bubble was like emoting and everything, and it's just like you couldn't hear me. So I literally just muted myself and then muted myself, and
Ah,
so.
awesome.
Um, but no, the only thing I was saying is just feel free to reach out. I try to interact with anybody that wants to talk or message me, and that's a goal that I have for Undaunted as well. So, please feel free to hit us up.
Absolutely, yeah. And like I was saying, wacky end of a video for anybody that stuck around for the ending. I'll put Frank's Twitter and the new team Twitter, Undaunted, in the description down below. And did you have any other shout outs, Frank, before we get out of here?
Shout out to you, my friend. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, absolutely, man. It was great. So yeah, I hope you all enjoyed this video. Of course, as always, deck list is in the description down below, courtesy of Frank and Undaunted. Any of the links that we mentioned you could find down below. And shout out to PoTownStore.com, my lovely sponsor, and you can use code CELIO for 5% off on PTC geocodes over there. Have a good day, and I'll see you next time here on Celio's Network.